have any pictures. Let's take this out for now. So normally an image will not be clickable unless you give it as a clickable action or you set it to a simple button kind of thing. But image button is something that it is a button which acts like as a button as well as an image view. So it's not something that you have to make a different or make it clickable again in order to make it do some action on when you click on it. So image button is something, of course, which is very similar to a button with an image on it. So we generally use image views. For example, if you are using any kind of new image views that can do the same work, that is well and fine. And if I take what we generally do is we take an image view and make the image view clickable, and when you write set on click listener for this image view, it similarly works like that. And but only difference between image button and image view is image view will not have anything separately again. I mean, it doesn't have a container again which looks similar to it's carrying an image inside it. You can figure it out similarly when you see the image view. So let me show it here itself. I'll use the same image again. So the difference between image button and image view is this. As I told you, it doesn't have some kind of feeling like it has some container behind it. So image view will not have that kind of container behind it. But when you talk about the image button, it looks like it has some kind of container behind it in order to make that clickable or give that kind of it's a clickable button look. Because nowadays we doesn't see any images or as a layman user, no one knows that an image is a clickable image, so that you can click there and you can go somewhere. As if you go on a Facebook, for example, if you open a Facebook application and you can click on any of the profile picture that you see on your post, and you can go there to his profile directly. But when you see for the first time, when you are a first time Facebook user on 2008 or 2007, so you don't definitely understand that clicking on this picture will take me to somewhere, or this particular image is clickable. You don't have that kind of see through there. And of course, if it is a web application, that is completely a different scenario, because when you put your pointer on particular place, it will show you a hand symbol which will make that it's a clickable button, or it's a different, or it gives you a hover or tooltip somewhere. So but in mobile phones, you don't have that kind of chance in order to make, or in order to see that yes, this is a clickable button. So in order to make see that to a user, you can't make him understand that it's a clickable unless he clicks there and sees it. So of course you can give a small demo regarding your application in order to understand what your application does and what all it had. So let's go to the other components now. So this is the difference between the image button and image view, and let's talk about the progress bar later, because the progress bar is something which will be indicated to a user, showing him that something is happening or some operation is happening. Generally it does that when application is connected to a server or talking to a server to get some data or to post some data. For example, when you are opening your Facebook details, or when you open up your Facebook application, you see a login application, or you see a login page where you put down your username and password and click on the submit button. So there you see a loading thing, or anywhere you see a progressing thing, which will be giving an impression to a user that there is some operation happening behind, or some operation is happening at that particular moment. That could be an authentication. So as per our example, when you have written something or when you write something there and you're clicking on the submit button, it's making you to that gives a user a feeling that yes, my authentication is being done. So if you don't put that particular loading bar or something, user doesn't know that when it has been started or when it is going to end. So which makes a user panic, or he may lose the interest in the application. So it's always a good thing, or it's a user perspective wise, it's always show him some loading. If you don't show him any loading, it doesn't help out to the user who sees it. When he clicks on the button, he doesn't understand whether that particular button is pressed or not. Because when you help him showing the progress bar, when you click on a button, if you're starting an operation in the background, or if you're starting authentication with a server, you definitely has to show a progress bar at any way, or you can show it in different kinds of progress bars. You can show loading somewhere, or you can show something getting loaded, or you can make it different animations at that point, where user understands that yes, my input has been taken and phone is not something like stuck or something happened differently. So progress bar is one of the best component to make your application and user understand that it's working and it's not something happened differently or something happened in a different way. So there are different kinds of progress bars, like you had large, you had normal. Even though you pull it up here, you don't see anything here as of now, but the kind of sizes will actually differ here. The progress bar could be small, the progress bar could be normal, and progress bar horizontal is something very different. As you see something going on, like whenever the download starts, you see a seeking happening, or the amount of percentage happened. In the same way, you can show a horizontal line bar when you use a progress bar horizontal. So it depends upon the usage, or it depends upon the application requirement, which progress bar you want to use. You want something customized, you can write your own progress bar, or if you want to use some horizontal progress bar, you can use a horizontal progress bar. So the difference between the horizontal progress bar and the small progress bar will be very small. So the progress bar, this is for this style small, which means the progress bar will be looking very small. And when you talk about the horizontal, it is also using the same progress bar tag, but the difference is that it's using the attribute, or the style is being changed from progress bar style small to progress bar style horizontal. So all these styles, as we spoke before, it will be there in the app compat library, so you don't need to worry about them, or you don't need to write them differently again. Let me make some space. And Seekbar. So Seekbar, we generally see Seekbars for so many other components, like whenever the song is playing, you see the Seekbar moving, or the video is playing, you see the Seekbar moving. So Seekbar is always showing you, or will let you know that something is working, or you can know the status of some operation. For example, if I see a song or video playing, if I don't see how much of the video left, or how much of the song left, so that is actually something you're masking the user from looking at, or you're not giving him the chance of looking how much is present, how much has been done. So Seekbar is very essential when you do that kind of applications, where you show or play a song and you want to show him the status of that particular song playing, or you want to show how much is left, and everything can be done there. So rating bar is another kind of widget where you want to show rating for a particular person or particular application. So we see generally this coming up in the middle of any application or game you are running. So where you say, it shows you this rating bar and will ask you, rate this app right now or later, or maybe later or not now. It gives you different options, so you can simply rate it at different ways. So anyway, you can make the rating with default values as well. And the number of stars is the tag you have to write, and you can put 5, you can write 6, you can write any number. And when you see when you simply look at the design, you see the number of stars has been 5, and if you want to make them more, you can simply write 6, and the number of stars increases to 6. So you can put any number of stars simply by placing the number of stars there. So you can keep on increasing the number of stars on your UI. You can generally we put 5 or we put less than 5 so that it doesn't take it to the next line, as rating will be showing on somewhere in the very small places. So you don't need to show more than 10 or more than 5, because if it is in a different case. So rating, in order to give some rating for anything, you can use the rating bars. And spinners. So spinners is a kind of item like in web you can equal it, or you can compare that with the drop down, where you click on something and the drop down appears. So the drop down is very similar to the drop down that comes for web applications, or you simply use a drop down for web application. It's the same as spinner here. So by default it could have any number of items. So you can load something into the spinner by similarly writing an adapter to it and setting the adapter to the spinner. So you can give hint, it doesn't have a hint or a text, but the default text would be setting by hint that will be written at Java. So here you can write something like select type or select anything else. So we can generally use it where you need to use a drop down. It's just a small case. And WebView, WebView will have a separate tutorial on this one, but WebView is something that where you like to load a simple URL on your phone page. For example, if you know there is some kind of site that is actually mobile compatible site, because all the web portals will not be mobile compatible. So if you want to see some kind of website in your application without going to the Google Chrome or any other browser, you can simply write an application with a WebView in it, and you can load the URL there. We will write a separate tutorial for that anyhow. And let's finish on the text fields and containers next. And text fields, you'll have different kinds of text fields, and let me finish on this first, deleting them. And you'll have a plain text view where you will be entering a normal text views, and it's no way different from any kind of view. Whatever the view you're seeing here, it will be the same view that you see when you run an application on your phone and see. It's no way different. So when you want the plain text view, you use a plain text view which will be taking all kind of inputs. So it is not very cumbersome that it will give you only the alphabets or it gives you only the numbers. So when it is a person name, obviously it gives you person name something like this, which has a ready-made hint inside it. So you simply write a name inside it. So the text keyboard or the soft keyboard that comes out of the application or that comes from the bottom is always, when you tap on this particular field, the keyboard automatically pops off. So we call generally that keyboard is called soft keyboard. So this soft keyboard will generally consist of all kind of alphabets, and you can go to numbers, which is a normal keyboard that you see. But there, if you sometimes you can make the keyboard available only to the particular contents. For example, you can make the user write only numbers instead of names, but for that purpose you need to use number signed text field. So each and every kind of text field you want to use, there is a different kind of text field. So the difference between this text field and this text field will not be different, but only thing is that you'll make the text type or input type different. So the input type for person name will be text person name, and the input type for the numbers or the phone number. For example, if you want to ask username then you'll use a text person name. But if you want to use user mobile number, then you have to use input type as number signed. Of course, the tag would be same edit text, but the difference happens in input type. So when you said number signed, which means that it gives only signed numbers. So the soft keyboard popping up from the bottom also will give only the numbers instead of text, because if user wants to enter a number, if you pop up or if you give the input type of text person name, it will pop up to him as a normal keyboard which will have alphabets. But as per user experience, or when you want to think of your application should be really seamless, and the client or the person who using your application should be very easy in using your application, then you have to understand each and every point, and you have to be keen on each and every point. For example, if you are asking the mobile number, you are not able to, you shouldn't show the soft keyboard that pops up with alphabets. You should pop up that keyboard which comes out with the numbers. So that makes user easy, and instead of making him go to the numbers again, write something and then post it. So you're making him, or you are making the user clicks less in this way. For example, if I asking a mobile number and giving him alphabets, so what does it makes sense is he has to click on the numbers again, click some other numbers and say okay, which means he's doing twice taps instead of one tap. So if I simply make it number signed, which makes the keyboard to pop up itself is numbers instead of alphabets, so which makes user easy, and the user can directly enter a number and go on. So in a similar fashion, you had another text field called password. So this password text field is something which used while entering a password. For example, you don't want to show a password to a user while entering, so it simply can be changed into dots or stars as per the developer requirement. So you can, in order to make that particular edit text or text field password text field, you have to make the input type text password. In order to make it number sign. In order to make it simple person name, you have to make it text person name. And let's go to the other one, and password numeric. So password numeric is something like, if you want the passwords to be entered only numbers, then user can be allowed, or a user can be popped up with the keyboard, because password can be anything, but in some cases you want the password to be only numeric for some reason, so you can make the user enter password only numbers by simply popping a input type number password. So the password that he enters will be only numbers. At the same point, they will be converted into dots or stars while he entering, without showing it to the other people. So similarly, you had email. So email is something you have to enter an email address into that field. So you can put simply text email address and do the email address check in order to see that particular email address or the user entered text is a valid email or not. You can use input type text email address for email addresses, and phone is for phone number, which gives you only numbers, and postal address is something that it gives you postal codes, like it gives you only the numbers in order to enter 500038 or 50078. So whatever that kind of numbers. In time and date, these are the text fields which are very useful whenever you want to enter some kind of time or date. It will be easy, like there will be a ready-made slashes or mmddyy kind of slashes in between, so user can directly enter the date or time in order to make easy, instead of going to the numbers, writing something and putting the slashes again. Instead of putting all these things, you can simply write the numbers without caring much about the slashes and other things or the format. So that are regarding the widgets. After the widgets, let's talk about layouts, and there are different kinds of layout in Android applications. So let's talk about each of this layout, and before that, each and every layout is here is something very specifically used in different cases. For example, if you want to use some layouts which has different kind of dependencies with each component that is present. For example, you had 3 buttons, and 3 buttons can be at any different positions and they has to get interlinked together. Then you use relative layout. In this sense, there will be link between each and every component beside it. And if you are using a grid layout is something that you make layout divided into different grids. So you generally see grid is like something kind of a table, and table row layout is if you want to make a particular layout like a table row. For example, if you want to make something like a list with some serial numbers, some contents, and some kind of quantity numbers, so in a 3 columns and number of rows, then you go for a table layout, and inside a table layout you will use table rows. So table layout childs are always table rows. So when I am talking about layouts, so layout is something that is always a parent to all the components which were present inside. For example, if I create a layout, by default it will have some kind of layout inside it. So if you see this, if this is a fresh layout that I just created, so this is having some layout by default, which means that it had by default a linear layout. So anything I write outside it is not actually considered. So anything I has to write inside it, which means that linear layout here is supposed to be or will act as a parent layout, and all the views or all the widgets which you write inside it are child views. So that is why this layout is always match parent, width match parent, and height match parent. So which means your layout is first like a container, or it's like a mother of all the childs which present in that. So linear layout is one of the layout mostly used when you want to had minimal amount of views, or you don't have a complex view, or you don't need to write a complex view. Simply you had a 1 or 2, 3 buttons, or everything is one after the other in a serial row. So then you can use linear layout for this. So linear layout is basically used for the simple kind of layouts, not for the complex kind of layouts. Because if I had a layout inside a layout, for example, if I want to make a button and a text view together, a button, or let me take a switch instead of that to look cute. So text view and a switch. So but now I want this switch to actually come beside it. So what I has to do? I has to put these two inside into another linear layout, and let's make it match parent for width, graph content for height, and orientation horizontal. So in order to make them side by side, I have to make this linear layout orientation or change its orientation to horizontal. So if I make it horizontal, or if I put a horizontal orientation linear layout, and there are 2 views inside it, the views will be adjusted side by side for both of them. For example, I want to put this, and so that is how it looks. So you see that, and let's make it a little padding, give it a little padding, so there will be some gap between it. So that is how it looks. So if I want to make this kind of views again and again in the same layout, so I have to create the same layout again and again. For example, if I want to take another same couple of items, then I have to do the same way. So my linear layout components is being increased along with the requirement. For example, I can't use 100 linear layout inside this. So this is called something recursive kind of using linear layout, so which is not generally encouraged in doing this, because when you had a linear layout inside a linear layout, and again that linear layout had inside another linear layout, which is called a nested linear layout kind of procedure. So when you keep on increasing the layouts inside a layout, the loading will generally take time. So whenever your view gets loaded for an activity, or when you set content view r.layout.widgets underscore layout, so it takes more time to load the view onto a mobile or onto a device, so which makes the view to load more time, which means that the user has to wait on it for more time. And whenever you are recreating these views, even then you will make the user to wait for so much time. So it's not something always recommended for application to do that. So linear layout can be used for simple kind of layouts where you simply need one after the other, and you simply need a list of items inside it, or a couple of items one by one, or you don't have anything related to it side by side. So linear layout can be giving you only those things one after the other or side by side of it, so but not one after the other at the same time side by side of it. So you can't mix up both. If you are going to mix up both, you are ending up in nested linear layouts again and again. So instead of using linear layout, in that case you can use a relative layout. Relative layout that will relative layout is a bit different than the same kind of layouts that we use for this. For example, it always relative layout, the name itself will tell you that it has a relation with something, so it gets related with each and everything or each and every component that present. So the code which I have written now seems like it had two text views and two switch views, but still you see only one large text and one switch, but it's not correct. You see both the views are being overlapped one on one, so I have to give some kind of relation or some kind of value in order to make them come bottom to it or one below the other. So what could I do is, I just given it a tag called layout below, and I gave the ID of this particular text view in order to make this text view come below this text view. So that was my requirement. So I actually used the same kind of thing, but for the linear layout too, but I have to create another layout and another couple of items inside it. But if I use relative layout, I can use the relation in between these particular views, or I can connect them relatively inside the same layout and decrease the number of layouts used inside a layout. So now I can make the same switch in the same way. So for the switch 2, I'm writing the layout below. So you write the switch also. So let me make this. Change the text. Switch 1. And let me make this switch 2. So that's how. So you see the switch 1 and switch 2 are getting in a same relative layout, you can see that they get adjusted or they get relatively aligned. So you can't, you need not to use different layout again to make them work vertically as well as horizontally. So it's always recommended that if you had a very complex views, or if you had where you need to use nested linear layouts, it's always recommended to use linear layout because it gives you good performance than the linear layout. So always it's better use linear layout for your views while developing anything. Clearly you have to mention the relation in between them, and always make sure that if any of this particular item is getting visible or gone, the problem with the relative layout is they get completely disturbed. For example, if I make this particular list view visibility gone, so you see that switch 2 has gone to the top, and this the below switch is not actually interrelated, so which means that they are not tightly coupled. So it is actually depending upon only the text view 2 but not, or the switch 1. So but it has to be willing to be side of this particular switch but not on above switch, but it got disturbed. So when you had multiple items, or when you had interrelated to one another, so when you make a particular item invisible, so there comes the problem with the relative layout. So you have to make sure that you are not making the particular layout so related, and when you want to make something invisible or visible or gone, you don't you're not making any of that views scrambled or crumbled. Beside one option you see the other option coming and something not like that, so that will completely mess up your layout. So in order to fix this issue, I can give this one more dependency. Work layout, align left to, okay, to left of this. So oh my god, what happened to this? So if, okay, I didn't make this gone, still there. So that is how you have to make it. I mean, you simply has to give related it to the one or two items more than that. So you always make sure that if you're going to make something invisible, or if you're going to make something gone, visibility gone, then you don't please try to put that particular related item with any other item. You always put some other items which were always present, so that the layout will not get crumpled or it doesn't get scrambled somewhere. So that will be easy way of doing the or using the relative layer effectively. So relative layer doesn't have any kind of vertical orientation or horizontal orientation. So the horizontal orientation or vertical orientation is only for the linear layouts. You don't have any kind of orientation for relative layouts. So along with the tags that you see, layout below, layout above, there were so many options like to the start of, or to which to start off. For example, you can see the documentation every time. It's better always keep checking the documentation, because you see some new things get added whenever you had an updated API, and some things get deprecated when there is an update in the API or update in the new version or new SDK. So you keep on reading the document. So it's always a better component. Something comes new, you have to read the documentation and then go on with it. So because the new components or new tags which were being used will have specifically being given for some kind of views, because when the material design comes in, or when the material design has come, there are so many new kind of views coming, like parallax views, which we're going to talk about in later tutorials anyhow. And a parallax view is something like when you keep on scrolling the top layout, or if there is some kind of profile picture or big background picture you had, that gets into a very small, and the list gets very big. Something you had in a WhatsApp web application, when you keep on scrolling, the will get minimized to a action bar length. So you had something like align right. If you want to align right to something, or if you want to align start off before, or start in the sense you want to add something or some component before an item, you can use align start, and you can use align top. So when you want to align something on top of some other value or some other widget, and in the same way you had center horizontal, center in parent. Center in parent is very much useful in relative layouts, because if you want to put some item in center, you can't actually put it with some related to one component or other components. For example, if I want a button in middle of a screen, irrespective of any other item present, or irrespective of anything that were there, so I have to take it this way. So either I put it in this gravity layout, gravity center horizontal, it gives you the same thing, or you can align center to the parent true, also gives you the same thing. So that is about the relative layout. And the most important layout of today is frame layout. So the frame layout is actually designed to block out an area on the screen to display a single item. For example, this frame layout is being used a lot than before, because the previous layouts are very straightforward, and there cannot be something linked or something shown in a 3D kind of view. But recently the views has been changed a lot, and they are very catchy, and the material concepts will give you lot more chances to make your view very catchy and very sophisticated. So frame layout is something that will make you to do or make your items or customized widgets or your widgets to look in a 3D way. So the 3D view is the view that will be actually seen for some components, where you can see the X, Z, Y axis together in order to see the particular animation for a button, and everything that will be available to you directly straight from the material designs. So there is no other layout that will facilitate that. I mean, the linear layout or any other layout will not give you as much as frame layout supports you for that kind of layouts you want to do. So frame layouts will definitely gives you a different kind of support than any other. So let's do a sample here. So let's keep this inside the frame layouts, and look at the design now. So when you see the design here, there are different kinds of buttons here, and each of these buttons has been overlapped on each other, because the frame layout is something that will give you view, or that will make the view visible at some param size. Like if you had 3 components on a view, and each component should be visible at different levels. For example, something like a parallax view. Parallax view will be overlapping when the list view is scrolled up towards up. The parallax view will be automatically scrolling up, or the action bar size is automatically decreased, which means that some items will be showed up at some point of time or on a different condition. So when you want that to happen, the frame layout is something that will be framing up each part into different frames. So you can show one frame at one particular part and other frame at other particular part, and it's not something that you always keep on showing or keeps on hiding that. So it's different, it gives you a different way that giving it. So anything that you add top to a frame layout, that is the very first thing that you are going to show to the user, or that will be displayed on the view. Of course, the frame layouts is we will take a different and separate tutorial on frame layout, how the working of the frame layout does, and how actually a frame layout works, and what kind of layouts we can develop with the frame layouts. And let's talk about the text clock and text clock, analog clock. Before that, I think we can go to the containers. So along with the layouts, I think containers are the same, comes under the same kind of group, where you will not find any difference in between, like, because a container is the same which contains or which carries a couple of or huge amount of text inside it. So similarly, linear layouts or any other layout does. So any other layout does, in the sense now linear layout is the parent of all the views which present inside it, and container is also responsible, or is also the other parent which is present inside its group. For example, radio group. So radio group is created similarly like a layout, and inside what are the components you keep. So obviously we will be keeping only the radio buttons inside the radio group, so which comes into this way. And let me create that. And I'm putting these 2 buttons inside this radio button 1, radio button 2. So each of these radio button 1 and radio button 2 are being coupled inside a radio group, which makes these both buttons work like a radio button normal functionality. Because if you keep this radio button separately, user will be able to select 2 of the radio buttons independently, because they were not coupled together inside a container. But if you keep it inside a radio button group, or radio buttons inside a radio group, that will make both the radio buttons link together, in the sense when you click on one of the radio button, the other radio button is automatically getting unchecked. So you don't, or developer doesn't need any kind of logic to be written when he puts this kind of when he use this kind of containers for radio buttons. So radio group is something that very useful in order to group the items together and make the functions as per the requirement. So that is one of the use of this radio containers. Similarly, list view, which we have seen it in the previous tutorials, where you see the list of contents at a time at one place by simple scroll views and all. So similarly, we'll have grid view, and we'll go to see the next tutorial with the grid view, and how we are going to lower the images inside it, and how we are going to show list of images. Similarly, how a gallery looks with the grid view. So because the grid view is the normal or easy view that will be shown to a user to see multiple contents at a time, that is easy to show. For example, your photos in gallery, is easy to pick up the photos when the all the photos were being presented in a grid view instead of list view. So because list view is confined to a space constraint. For example, you can't show a big image in a list view because it occupies so much of a space in left sides or right sides, because each item or each row will be occupied completely, so you can't put something side of it. But when you said grid view will have a chance of putting number of columns. So for example, if you had a grid view like this, and you can have a number of columns here, which will make you to give any number of columns you want. If you put number of columns 3, it will take 3 columns at a time. In the sense, it will have one row with 3 items, and number of rows depending upon the items. So you can increase it to any number depending upon the size of the grid you want to keep it. So depending on the size of it, if you keep on increasing it, there is no problem. But if you increase it without any kind of size constraint and all, you face a lot of other problems. Like we generally put images in the grid view. So if you put a grid view with 5 in a row and the image is very big, so it ends up in resizing itself to that or shrinking to that size. In order to keep 5 images on that particular row, it shrinks the images a lot, which will be losing its quality. So using grid view is something that it has to be very careful that your particular images or whatever the content you're going to show is actually fitting to that particular resolution. And you also make sure that the phones which you are running in are having different kinds of width and different kinds of height. So it's not sure that all the phones will be showing the same amount of resolution photos that you are showing in other phone. For example, Nexus 5 will be showing you 5 rows, but the resizing capacity of that particular image could be more, but the resizing capacity of other phones could be lower. So it depends upon the resolution and the phone size as well. So whenever the phone photo shrinks a lot, the view will get distorted and it looks ugly when you're showing images in a grid view. So always make sure when you're using a grid view, make sure that you're gonna use a perfect image sizes inside the items. And expandable list view is one of the other list view that will be seeing in the next tutorials anyhow. But let me tell you about it. Normally, on other hand, expandable list view is basically used for when you want some kind of tree structure. For example, you want something, you'll have a main items in a list of rows, and when you click on one of that, you want the sub items to come in another drop down or another expandable area. So then you use expandable list view. So where you see root and children below it, and root and children below it, and you can close it at any time and you can open it any time, so that it looks like some kind of single level tree structure. And when you want more and more levels of tree structures, or you want to something similar to tree structure, then you want to go with some kind of other layouts or custom expandable list views with 2 or 3 levels of tree. So that is not the tree structure is not basically given in widgets of Android. So when you say tree structure, there is so many things to get handled, and it's not basically encouraged in the mobile phones, because mobile phones area is very limited. You can't explain or you can't expose the whole contents of a tree similar like in system or a laptop. So because the screen size of systems and computers are very big when you compare with the phones, it's a lot more bigger than any other phones and any other tablets. So tree structure is normally not encouraged inside it, so it's better to go with the expandable list view and make another kind of representation in mobile apps. So it is always not a compulsion that each and every mobile app should be looking similarly like an web options. So if you had a web application, so you want to make something, a mobile application out of that web application, so the views will have a bit of changes, and because as of now we have the material design, so you have to go with the material designs in order to showcase your web contents in the application. So when you are making the material design compatible, or your web making the compatible to the Android application, so there is no guarantee that the same views will be reflected inside the mobile application same as it does in the website. So we keep on changing the contents in different way, but the representation will be different, but the data will be the same. So the presentation is different doesn't mean that it doesn't look very easy for the user, but it's very easy for the user. Instead of a website user, a mobile application user will be looking in a different way, because the way you look a website and the way you look a mobile application is entirely different. When I said you, it's a normal layman user I'm talking about, because when the area of the mobile is very small, you can't simply sit or you can simply see each and every item at each and every corner of your phone. It has to be very clear, and you can't dump everything into a single area where you can't put 100 options into one screen. You have to segregate them accordingly, and you have to distribute them in each screen, and don't make the screen so much heavy with the all kind of components or all kind of options in one screen. Instead of that, put them in a very intelligent way. For example, if you want to keep something, create new items somewhere in a side heading or some kind of new button, make that a simple float button with a plus icon. So that will simply give a user an idea that yes, this will help me out to create a new view, instead of going or simply writing create a new page or putting that much big button and writing that much big text. It's better to represent everything with some icons. So plus icon will help you simply, or give the user an idea that this is to add something. So when it is some other options, you can give an icons. So it is always recommended that you keep using icons more than the text, because as mobile phones having the very precisely less area, so you should be able to write very small text, or instead of text it's better to use icons. So the only reason or the only problem that comes in the way of using icons is you have to use the perfect icons accordingly to the different sizes. For example, you have to use HDPI image, HDPI image, MDPI image accordingly. If you use the only one icon for all the phones, you end up showing very small icons for very big phones or very big icons for very small phones. So keep on, do some research on that, or make your sizes perfect, do some R&D on it, work out on it, get the images accordingly, put them in respective folders and use them easily. So icons are more recommended than the text that you put in your application, because icons will definitely catch up the user side more than the text, because users doesn't like to read a big text that you write on some button or write on some particular area. Instead, an icon will simply give him a idea that yes, this is for the option that I'm looking for. So if you wanna see how the mobile applications that Google develops or what kind of idea behind those people are there, you can simply see Gmail applications or G Drive, whatever the application that comes out of a big firms or very standard application developers. They definitely use more icons, less text, less number of clicks, fast UIs. So fast UI is something that we spoke before. When you put nested layouts inside a layout, then you keep on increasing the time to load that particular UI. So don't put nested linear layouts or anything nested. So make the layout as much as simple, and keep the layout as much as simple, and put the components in a proper area, and use respective icons instead of text as much as possible, and make sure that each and every alignment that you do will have a good segregation. For example, if you look at this particular layout and I had a different segregation, and if I can't put this radio button items one below the other or one after the other, so it has to have a different kind of view or different kind of way to represent them. So you don't need to use only the radio buttons, you can also use any kind of other images in order to make them simple and in order to make them easy for a user. So the radio buttons are gone now, and you can use new kind of icons that are coming into the market, or you can take your own creativity out of this and make it more easier to the people. And let's go to the another layout, that is scroll view. So scroll view is actually a layout that doesn't have anything inside it, or it's simply used, or you write anything inside a scroll layout will be simply scrollable. For example, I had a different number of layouts inside it. I had n number of layouts inside it, which shouldn't be there, but I had n number of components inside it, where for example, Nexus 5 device can incorporate all the devices or all the components at one go, but I may have some kind of devices which may not incorporate all the widgets one by one because of the height constraint, because this particular Nexus 5 could be 5-inch, but what about the 4-inch? 4-inch devices now need something different in order to see the rest of the items. For example, and I'm creating a new radio group again, layout below, out, below. No, it's not coming. Okay, let me write it in a linear layout there. So this is being used only for the purpose to explain the concept, but not to the real-time usage. So please don't do this again and again, or use the different layouts inside it. So generally my point here is if I had so many other components along with along with the same kind of height. For example, I don't have the scroll view. So you see there were so many components coming in. So if I use the same things again and again, see the number of buttons has been increased in a row. So this is Nexus S or Nexus 5X, which is a 5.2 inch and 1080x1920 resolution. So but if I have something which is lower to that resolution, which I take Nexus 4, which is of only 4.7 inch height or 4.7, so there will be some contents or some contents getting cut down in the bottom. So which means that the number of items got cut down in the bottom or are not visible due to the screen constraint size, because the contents would not shrink as per the screen resolution. Because if you had a more number of layouts, you keep on checking the contents, they get overlapped at some point of time. So they don't generally come overlapping on one item on another. Instead, they get cut off in the bottom, or it gets occupied how much of that contents can be visible, and rest of the contents will get cut down or will be truncated, or at least it couldn't be visible. So in order to address that issue, what we actually do is we use a scroll view for a whole layout. In the sense, the scroll view will be the mother of all the views, including the very first linear layout. So when you keep that, you can make the user scroll to the bottom without missing any of the components, in the bottom. So that will help the user not to cutting down or missing the widgets in the bottom due to the size constraint. So that's why we use scroll view. But there are being some other cases, like when you want to push more than one kind of list view inside a scroll view, which won't scroll anymore. I mean, the list view won't scroll anymore, which we call it as non-scrollable list view, which is a custom widget. And when you want those kind of list views inside a layout and they has to get scrolled, then obviously use a scroll view for that. So scroll view is generally comes with the list view, or list view by default has a scroll view, but all other components doesn't have a scroll view, or linear layout doesn't have a scroll view. So that is why you keep a scroll view above all of this in order to make it scrollable if the size of the contents are more than the screen resolution or the screen height. So if the screen height is enough, the scroll will not move anywhere, or the contents will not move anywhere, they fit to that particular screen. But when the screen is less in height, more than the widgets available, then the scroll view will actually scroll up and down. And coming to the horizontal scroll view, till now we have seen the scroll view, or we spoke about the scroll view that scrolls only vertically but not horizontally. But if you want some kind of horizontal scroll view where you want to simply show them by showing something, a list of suggestions or list of photos, when the user taps and scrolls or pinches the photos from right to left or left to right, you can give a scroll view, horizontal scroll view, in order to give that. The same kind of horizontal orientation also can be given for the list view, where list view also has scrolling from vertically as well as horizontally. So you can have horizontal and vertical scroll views in the both views. So, and thank you guys, and let's talk about the rest of the containers and the other views in the future tutorials. Thank you. Thanks a lot.